content as. And so our title for today is Stop Winging It. This is something that I've heard so much over, especially the past 2 years, um, more and more over the past year and moving into next year. So today we're going to be talking about some big ideas, some mindset shifts that will help give us a smarter way to plan for English language development and for providing accessible instruction to our English learners and multilingual learners. I forgot to ask this, but in the chat, if you could also say what your role is. Are you the content teacher, administrator, ELD teacher? That helps to know as well, to get to know what examples to share with you. I definitely recognize some names and faces. But for those of you who are new to English Learner Portal, I'm Kelly Ryder. I'm the founder of English Learner Portal, and I will be sharing some insights and ideas with you today, as well as some opportunity. And so you are in the right place today. If you are an English language development teacher, I know it goes by a lot of different names in different places, ESL, ELD, all of the above, EML. I know some of you, I recognize names from Montgomery County, your EML, I believe some Prince George's too. If you're a program or school leader, which I see, we have assistant principal here as well. Excellent. I'm going to guess that's Nori. And then we have content teachers. So we do have content teacher representation. We have the whole list. So what we're going to talk about today applies to all of you. So I can reassure you of that. The ideas we are discussing today that I'm sharing with you today are based on years of experience. This is now my 32nd year. Wow, so lots of years of experience, and most importantly, based on research. So you can be assured that everything we're talking about today, everything that I'm sharing with you, does have a research base. And if you're interested in looking at research and reading research and exploring that background, then we do have a bibliography of research that I will share with you in the follow-up emails, where I send your replay link and all of that, with some very specific research background for what we're going to talk about today. And most importantly, tried and true, right? Ideas that have been implemented and tested successfully across the country. We now have some international schools participating in some of these mindset shifts and ideas. And so it is coming along. All right, and Sonia, you are new to EL. So welcome to the club. Hard to find a better position in the school system out there. And what I love most about being in the English language development field is the collaboration, the generosity, the heart of everyone in the field. So welcome. For showing up live today, you get a bonus. I know this is summertime. Some of us are still working or just gone back to teach summer sessions. Some are teaching summer school. Some have taken the time off. So I really appreciate you spending time with me today and with the others here to talk about how to stop winging it and feeling that I don't know what's going on feeling in the classroom. And as my thank you to you for showing up here live and keeping me company online this afternoon, is that we are in the process of continuing to develop the English Language Development Standards Alignment Guide. And what this guide is a living document that we are working on every day. So towards the end of this presentation, I will share the Google Drive link with you. It is shared as a link because we are constantly going into that link and making updates and changes and adding more information. So you will have constant access to the most updated version when you save the link that I'm going to share with you later. The standards alignment guide is a crucial tool in implementing the mindset shifts we're going to speak about today. So as we go forward, you will see the connection between this show up bonus and our content for today. So here's what I've been hearing, right? I spend a good amount of time in schools in different states traveling around, whether it be for professional development workshops or my favorite, which is going into the classrooms and coaching and watching teachers teach, or we have this cool online coaching platform where teachers can upload videos of their classroom and we can coach virtually anywhere in the world. So that is my favorite time. But I get to hear a lot about what's going on in schools and your challenges and your successes and what's working, what's not working. And so I'm going to share some themes with you that I have found. And you can let me know if this sounds familiar to you. Feel free to use the chat if you want to participate in that way. There's limited planning time to align the language and content. So what I hear a lot of is my administrators want me to push into the classroom. They want me to support the content area instruction, to be part of English language arts or math or whatever it may be, but there's so little common planning time. We're supposed to co-teach, but we don't have much time to co-plan. And when we do co-plan, I'm not sure what that should look like or how to structure it. So that's one common message. Give me a yes or me too in the chat box if you're feeling kind of the same thing. Yeah. All right. Very common theme. Seems to be for all of you as well. Even with your support and dedicated teachers, and I find in schools with English learner populations, especially higher percentages, that there's a lot of heart and a lot of people willing to go over and above and beyond to make things work and do what needs to be done for students. And even with all of that support, we're still finding places where our students are not as academically successful as we would like. Some places this comes out, things I hear in consulting with schools or when someone calls me, would be that our DIBEL scores look like a sea of red for our multilingual students, right? Something that I've heard for years and years and years. Our access scores are stagnant. Our exit rates have dropped. Our speaking scores are low and not moving, right? These are some of the data type feedback that I'm hearing as I go from school to school and speak to teachers and administrators. So again, if you're feeling that, feel free to say yes or give an example. Where is your school feeling this? Where are you as an individual feeling this? But we're definitely struggling with how our students are measured and how we're feeling success being measured. Right. Some students. Exactly. Excellent. All right. In some cases, this is a little less often than the others, but I still very frequently hear that our ELD teachers or our content teachers, they're not really quite sure what we're supposed to be doing with our ELD teachers' time. So you're being asked to, here's the vocabulary list for this unit. Can you front load the vocabulary? Can you keep working with this group of students on their letters and sounds? They're not quite there yet. They didn't finish yesterday's assignment. Could you help with that? Or this what the curriculum is asking them to do is way over their head. Could you help them get this done? So that kind of request is happening quite a bit. And it's perfectly understandable, because if I'm the content teacher and I see that I have students who are struggling to finish or struggling to engage in certain assignments or struggling with that sea of red data for some of our students, I I can only do the best with what I know. And so our content teachers are asking for that support. Where we're having some conflict is then, as the ELD people, we're feeling like, I want to be a team player. I want to help. I want to give my student everything that they need. But I also feel a little guilty that I'm not doing what I know or think I know I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not teaching ELD standards, or I'm not teaching ELD curriculum if I'm doing these follow-up or front-loading activities. And there's a lot of um, dissonance, right? Disconnect between what I feel I should be doing and what the reality is day to day in the classroom. So if you're feeling some of that, you can confirm that, or give me the opposite and say that that's not happening for you, and give me a little information there in the chat. All right. Often, yes, all the time. Focused on reading intervention. Right. Sometimes we'll get back to that reading intervention point in just a minute, but that is where a lot of those comments come from. So absolutely. So you are falling right in line with the many teachers that we have spoken to over the past few years. A lot of that comes from this, where many states have passed new education legislation that requires districts to choose from a small collection of curriculum that meets particular criteria that the state has decided. And when you are selecting your curriculum based on the state requirements, right, there's only so many options out there. And most of them tend to be very scripted, very detailed, rigorous, which is a good thing, high level curricula. And in that world where what the content teacher, right, we're being asked to go into classrooms to push in to co-teach, and that content teacher has a lot of scripted curriculum in their hand, or is required to teach this scripted curriculum, it leaves you feeling kind of, um, so where do I fit into that? I'm not in the script, right? As the ELD push-in person, I'm not in that script. So while this read aloud's going on, what am I doing? Right? Or when is the best time for me to go into the classroom, because I don't want to just watch. I feel guilty. There's so much they need. I want to be able to teach, but then I'm also required, our students have to go to some an intervention or something like that. And I need to be there too. And I need to be, right? You need to be everywhere doing everything. And you're feeling a little lost in, what is the best thing for me to do with my time? And that's where the title of the Stop Winging It, because we are struggling to find our place and figure out what the best thing for us to do is. And therefore, as we're learning and figuring it out and negotiating, we are often just flying by the seat of our pants and showing up with the best of intentions, the best heart, and trying to do the best we can with what unfolds as we learn all these new curriculum materials and work with new teachers and all of this. So all these different scenarios have led to kind of an identity crisis in the English language development field, where what was a given for a long time seems to now be really confusing of, what is my job? What are we supposed to be doing? And administrators are feeling it when they, I'm not sure how to guide my teachers or what to tell them. I'm not sure how to coach. I'm not content teachers are feeling, I'm not sure what to expect of my co-teacher or what I can ask for, and vice versa, right? There's a lot of this just uneasiness and unrest going on. And all we want is to be successful, right? To feel respected and valued is important, right? I have something to contribute. I am here for a reason. I have expertise. I want to do my job. I want to see my students be successful and get excited for them. And I want to have a life on top of that, right? I don't want to spend my weekends meeting with my co-teacher or emailing or texting with them or chatting on the phone or staying late to work every night or coming in extra early or meeting through our lunch times, right? How can we streamline all of this so that we can leave work each day feeling accomplished, that we've done something of value today, that we have helped our students, that we know where we're going tomorrow, and that we have very reasonable and clear expectations of each other. Sound like some of your wish list? Is there anything you would add to that wish list? Right? Anything else that you just want day to day? Feel free to add that in the chat box there. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so I feel like we're on the same page, right? So I feel like you are experiencing the same things that I've been experiencing recently. And I'd say, I'm trying to think of when this trend kind of started. Maybe about 5 years ago, the first state started making shifts that made things a little confusing on the ripple effect. More so the last 2 years, especially as more and more states adopt new curriculum, is when we feel the big push. All right, so you have already answered this. We have some yes, 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 sometimes sounds about right. Right, we're on the same page. When in my last role in public school teaching, I left public school, of course, to start English Learner Portal. So in my last role in the public school setting, I was coordinator for what was called the English Language Acquisition Program, which is ESL, ELD, same thing. And in that role, one of my responsibilities was to create curriculum, ELD curriculum, K through 12, so that we had quality tools for our teachers to use in teaching our students, and so that we were compliant with all the federal guidelines that say you have to have an English language development curriculum that's taught on a regular basis, that's based on English language development standards that are research-based, right? These federal laws we have to follow as a program. And so wanting to be compliant with federal law, wanting to do what's right for the teachers that I supervised, for the students in our program, we were writing curriculum. And the request of the district in my first year is we have a new reading program, English language arts program in elementary school. And I want you to align the ELD curriculum with that language arts curriculum. In secondary, we had individual class periods. Like we had an ESOL 1 class, an ESOL 2 class, a dedicated class period in the day for English language development. So that wasn't as complicated. We could kind of have free reign over there. We aligned it, of course, with other content areas. But in elementary, it was aligned with the language arts curriculum. So we worked all year learning that curriculum, lining it up, getting all the tools, figuring out how the language matched. And it was good. It was a stretch in some places, but it was good and it was functional. By the time we trained teachers in the second year, they started using it. We started running into some roadblocks where we kept hearing, I'm pushing in, and while it aligns, by the time we get started in a unit or a lesson, then the content teachers finished and moving on to something else because the pacing is so fast and my students need more time on particular topics. So we started to have a little struggle there. Then in year 3, they said, we're getting a new English language arts curriculum. There's new mandates from the state. Now we want you to align to this one. And so the 2 top images are kind of what I matched with what I was feeling at that time, right? Like reading that email and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, right? Like my team is going to cry. I'm going to cry. How many hours and hours and hours was spent writing that curriculum, and now we have to start all over again. We have to do that training all over again. The teachers are going to be so frustrated. They have spent 2 years trying to figure out how to make this work, and now we're telling them, never mind, and we're going to do it again. By the 3rd time in my tenure that we were given the, now I want you to align to something else, there had to be another way, right? We could not continue this and we could not be so reactive, right? Every time the district shifted, we had to shift. And we had a tiny little team. So I started talking to everybody I could talk to who I respected and knew and said, help, what else can we do? What else can we do so that we're not always reacting to what everyone else is doing, but that we can be flexible yet positive, that we're still meeting our federal guidelines and doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is the right thing for children. And so at that time, I started down the path. I started working with some folks from the WIDA consortium. I became a WIDA certified trainer right around that time, which was such perfect timing because I got to go spend a week in Madison, Wisconsin with the WIDA folks and meet everybody and meet the researchers and talk to everybody. And I picked everybody's brain I could while I was there. And in that time met one of the researchers and the main author of the WIDA consortium standards from 2020, Dr. Ruslana Westerlin. And she has been the most helpful person in the world of connecting me with the research and helping me understand that there's another way to look at things. And so I want to save you the 5 years that I spent trying to figure this out and give you some of the tips that she gave me then and that we continue to work together to figure out how to make it as practical as possible in the classroom. Because while we're always research-based, sometimes there's a stretch between the university level research and especially in the elementary classroom, but in K through 12 in general, there's a little disconnect of what's practical and realistic. So we needed to bridge that as well. So boiled down to a handful of what we call mindset shifts, because it's getting rid of the old way of thinking and considering new ways to think about language and language instruction. Now, I want to say up front, that doesn't mean that anything we've done in the past is wrong. It just means that what we've done in the past, it doesn't necessarily fit with what we're being asked to do in the present. And so what could work very well in some situations isn't really working in a situation where we're spending a lot of time pushing in or co-teaching. If you have pull out, you can still do a great combination of different things which fit as well. So mindset shift number 1, what we've always done is what we need to do, right? We have to let go that what we did before all of this was working and we got results. And so that's exactly what we need to do again. Yes, you would probably get results again, but we can't get away from the reality that the rest of the content areas and the rest of the school system and the leadership have shifted into new ways. And if we don't shift with them, we're going to continue to feel like we're flying by the seat of our pants forever. So we don't have to do what we've always done, and we can still find success. So here's the first big mind shift that I got from Dr. Westerlin. And it was like the best impromptu lecture ever that day. I left feeling totally confused but excited and ready to go learn more. She said, what's wrong in your mind right now is that you are stuck, you meaning me, stuck in a psycholinguistic research-based world when the rest of the world around you has shifted to a sociocultural approach to learning. And so while the psycholinguistic research is very valid and the sociolinguistic research is very valid, if it's a mismatch, you're never going to feel comfortable. So as it took her a long time to talk through and explain these things to me, so I'm trying to boil it down as simple as possible because it can get pretty complicated. But the bottom line is that what we were used to doing was a psycholinguistic approach, or if you took foreign language in school, that's a psycholinguistic approach, which requires us as teachers to explicitly teach all the parts of language. So think scope and sequence. Like we first teach nouns, right? We teach a lot of vocabulary, lots of nouns. We name everything. We have pictures, we have lists, we have the classroom labeled, lots and lots and lots of nouns. Then we might move to add in some adjectives and start describing things, talk about numbers. Then we can start putting phrases together. And as we add on each of these elements of language and grammar, we get a little bit longer phrases. Then we move into sentences. We can have, we do these dialogues and have kind of artificial conversation there, but are speaking in sentences. This is a psycholinguistic approach which follows the idea that language is learned in a certain order, and therefore there's a scope and sequence. There's nothing wrong with that idea of language acquisition because there's a lot of research around how the brain works with that. What happens is it turns out to not be realistic in the classroom because you need dedicated time to do that. And those skills are isolated and it's hard. It's very difficult to find a connection, especially if we're doing push-in, if we're co-teaching, that right now it says I'm supposed to be working with adding adjectives, but in the classroom we're doing this. And the teacher doesn't want me doing adjectives right now because that's not in the curriculum till next month. And we have this constant conflict all the time of what I feel like I should be teaching versus what will match what's going on in the classroom. And so it's just unrealistic that we can continue along that road of research. So what Dr. Westerlin suggested was to go learn more about sociolinguistics, specifically systemic functional linguistics, that's the SFL, systemic functional linguistics. That field of study is not as concerned of following a particular scope and sequence, but more concerned with communication and how we represent ideas, how we communicate ideas, how we create interaction and discourse, and the idea that language isn't linear. It's not step one, step two, step three. If you've been teaching language a while, you know they pick up this over here, they get a little of that, they have this, they have little Swiss cheese holes all over the place. Right. That sociolinguistics is I teach the language that students need right now to access the curriculum and to communicate what they know and what they're learning and what they want to say. And so it's more responsive to other curriculum versus trying to kind of put the square peg in the round hole or push ourselves into a place where it doesn't fit. So it is a big mindset shift to move from this is how we learn language to there's a lot of ways to learn language. And so let's learn enough about systemic functional linguistics and functional language planning so that we can flow with the curriculum instead of fighting against the curriculum. And I thought during that time, I'm like, that sounds like the perfect world. Of course, I had a lot to learn of how to make that happen, but it sounded perfect, right? And so systemic functional linguistics is acknowledging that language is a system of choices, right? We are constantly choosing what kind of language we use. Right now, I'm choosing to be a bit technical, but not too technical, to be just a professional and maybe a little bit formal, but also friendly and relatable and a little bit informal, right? We make all these choices. Context means everything. So as the context of the grade level classroom or the content area keeps changing, we can flow with it. It won't rock our world. If I was in class one day and they're talking about Confucius and I go in class the next day and we're now talking about colonization, I can flow with it because we're taking a functional language approach, right? And it's all about making meaning and communication. That's our mind shift number one. A lot of it goes with your instincts, but there's also bits and pieces and technical parts and expertise to learn so that you are maximizing it and that you get less and less about winging it and more about being very explicit and targeted in knowing where to go next. And with that, it's becoming a functional language planning expert, right? Knowing what the ingredients are to a strong program, knowing where to look for what to teach, knowing how it flows together, knowing what's expected of our students, knowing where they are and where they need to go. That functional language planning expertise is the transformation, that mindset shift that you need to feel more effective and in control of what you're doing. Just once you wrap your head around functional language planning, it gives you that sense of control and expertise that you once had, but feel like you lost somewhere along the way. Now, as part of that functional language planning expertise, there are some other mindset shifts that go with it. This we hear more from others outside of ELD, but we often do it to ourselves within ELD as well, that the job of the ELD teacher is to support content instruction. And I put an X on that, not because it's totally false, because of course we want our students to do well in the content areas. We want to support instruction, but it's in the nuances, right? The best role or the legal role of the English language development teacher is to teach language. And we've gotten lost in that in a lot of places where we are supporting instruction as best we can everywhere we go, but we have lost sight of the fact that by federal law, teaching language is the goal of the ELD teacher. And in doing that, in teaching language, you are supporting content because without language, there's not much that can happen in the content area. But it's just a slight mindset shift that says, as the ELD teacher, my primary role is not necessarily to make sure that my students are successful at everything the classroom teacher does, whether that be phonics, phonemic awareness, certain concepts, you know, comprehension strategy. My role is to give them what they need to be able to communicate what they're learning, what they think, how they feel, and to be able to take in all the content that the content teacher is teaching. In that way, we are supporting the content and the content teacher. And I'll give you a little bit more clarification on that moving forward. But we need to get back to the time or to the mindset that there has to be explicit language focus and instruction if our students are going to grow language. It's not going to happen at the rate we need just by chance, just by us being there. Right? So what should we be doing? Simple explanation, right? This can get um, a little bit more complicated, but our content teacher is the content area expert. I, as the ELD teacher, count on you, count on that person to tell me, where are we going? What do they need to know? What do they need to say about it? What do they need to write about it? What will they be reading about it? Right? That content teacher is the expert, and your job as the content teacher is to do your best to make sure all the students around you can participate and understand what's going on. Not always a simple task, but it's your job to try. And you contribute to the language growth in that way. So you have a role in language development. On the other side, as the ELD teacher, our focus is we're the language development expert. So we count on the content teacher for all the context and details so that we can help students access that information and communicate what we know and be able to do through language. In that, we are supporting their instruction. It is the ELD teacher's job to recommend what language makes sense based on what's going on in the classroom, right? We're not saying going to my filing cabinet, pulling out my week 13 folder and dusting it off and like, okay, week 13 is past tense verbs, right? That's gone. We're looking at what's happening in content and we're like, oh, that looks like a lot of compare and contrast. That looks like it would lend itself perfect to teaching about future tense. This looks like, right? And we talk about what language is happening right now that students need. And we model that and we work with our teachers to include all of that. All right, feel free to, put your thoughts in the chat as we go. Agree, disagree, offer other insight. Feel free to participate. So thinking about those roles, we have to get more comfortable with functional language planning because it's not going to be a day 1, day 2, day 3 list in front of us, right? That's a comfort that we squeeze and hold on to, but that's not going to be what we follow, right? We're going to be following a much broader menu of options. And like the super chef, we are going to become experts in how to pick exactly the right ingredients for the right situations when it comes to language and build success with our students. And we use our content area curriculum to guide us on that. Now, the first thing ever, we'll start working through this in workshops or in a course or as we talk with teachers and we get like, okay, that makes sense. I'm with you, right? You might be thinking right now, I'm with you so far. And then it kind of screeches to a halt for a minute as we get into day-to-day classroom. And this is where we end up next. The ELA curriculum is so dense. There is so much in there. There's no time to teach English language development lessons. There's so much going on. I don't even know what to teach or where to start. And I'm not the main teacher in that classroom, so I can't make a 15-minute lesson on, descriptive language because we'll never finish the content, right? So you know what's happening now. We're having all this conflict in our mind. And so through functional language planning training and through developing that expertise is how you find how you plan for the teachable moments, how you plan for integrating and making it as seamless as possible. In the functional language planning is where you gain your confidence to go to your co-teacher and say, oh, it would be great to, just do a 1-minute highlight of this little language piece right here and let them practice it for a second, and I'd be happy to lead that. And then we shift right back into the curriculum. right? When you are confident in your tools that you use for functional language planning and you're confident with the mindset, and as you get to know your content area curriculum better, it will flow, right? It will get there, but it does take some practice and coaching and training for our ELD and content teachers to appreciate that all of it is important, and we have to find opportunities in there. Not easy, but important, right? Okay, here's where I want to share one of the tools with you because I kept saying that you need the right tools, you need the right coaching. So one of the first places we start, I just put a Google Drive document here for you. We took the WIDA standards, the ELPA 21 standards, a couple other standards from different places, and started to develop this tool. And this is our functional language planning, our standards alignment guide. And when we are in this push and co-teaching situation, we can't really say, okay, this week is language of science, and this week is language of language arts, and I'm going to teach this standard. You will still be teaching to the standards, but this guide helps you, it gives you a menu of options. So when I sit down to plan by myself or with my co-teacher, or I look at the content area that I'm supposed to be supporting, I have my menu, my guide on one hand, curriculum on the other, and I'm looking for overlap, right? And if you can picture having a menu, and over the course of the school year, you want to sample everything on the menu because you want your students to be exposed to all the language that that grade level is expecting of them, or that those standards are expecting of them. So you know all the pieces on the menu. And so each day you are going to include something from the menu in your instruction, in your time in that classroom and with those students. And it really could be that each time you work on something from that menu, you are checking it off and saying, we have at least touched on this and explored this, and I need to come back to it, or they really got it and I can move on to something else. And in language teaching, we do a lot of cycles and circles and spiraling, right? Because it takes a lot of practice to really own a piece of language. And so, we may not master it that first time, but our list is there. It is always in front of us, that alignment guide. And I can always go back and say, we need a little more work on that. Let's work on this time. What aligns with the content? And with some practice and some examples and some guidance, you will build your confidence in how to look at that planning a little bit more differently. But you need some tools to help you organize your thoughts. As I said, this document is that living, breathing document that we are always updating, changing, tweaking, adding to. So hang on to that link because we will be, there will be an update by the end of next week, some reorganization and aligning, because as we're working with teachers and working through functional language planning with folks in the classrooms, we learn more and we do better and we organize better and we come up with clearer guidance. So we'll keep tweaking this, but it's a great tool to get you started in thinking of that menu of language that you have at your fingertips. Now, that doesn't mean that you just walk in the classroom, look at the menu and say, what's going on? Okay, let me teach this, right? We want to be planned. We want to be purposeful. We want to be intentional, right? And we want to have a planning method where we are going to introduce certain language and practice certain language points or features, language functions, language features, because there's a reason, not just because we picked something off the list for today, right? It is a very intentional process. All right, here's one that comes up then, right? I can usually get teachers, administrators agreeing with me like, yes, that makes sense. Yes, I'd like to do that. Let's look at this. How's that work? Let's do some training. And then we run into a screeching halt of, but wait a minute. And it happened just yesterday when I was talking in a coaching session with a teacher, and someone comes in and says, well, that's all good, but I need you to do the phonics intervention. And so then we go back to this, like, I can't get to ELD because I'm teaching reading intervention, or they've asked me to keep practicing the letters and sounds and CVCs until they get it down. And I know you know the reality that in this particular group, we're talking about third graders who have been in that type of intervention since first grade, second grade, and they're still doing it because there's a disconnect, right? And I could talk on this topic all day long, and we'll do future webinars around that idea. But my quickest way to explain how this works with the research is saying that if you're following that mindset that we're going to keep doing this intervention until someday they're going to get it, it is like this analogy with the watering can. The tree is your student, the watering can is those foundational skills, the phonemic awareness, that kind of deal. And your content teacher there in the blue shoes with the glove is pouring that content into the student year after year after year. And some of it's soaking in and some of it's running off. And so when that teacher's finished with their time, I think it looks like a she, right? Blue shoes, I don't know. Could be a man, could be a woman. Either way, this teacher passes the watering can to the purple shoe teacher and says, okay, you take over where I left off. And now our ELD teacher is pouring the same knowledge into the student, and little bits are sticking and a lot is running off. If we have runoff, if we have things that aren't sticking, there's a reason, right? And if we keep doing the same thing, thinking we're going to get a different result, right? That's the definition of, right? Definition of insanity, right? It's not going to change if we do it again in fourth grade or do it again in fifth grade. There's something that is not connecting. So we have to have a different approach. And what I can tell you is it's not hit or miss. There's a ton of language development research that overlaps very, very well with science of reading. So we're not moving away from science of reading. We're just emphasizing putting more priority on certain pieces, right? So the content teacher's putting a lot of priority on those foundational skills, all the things that are in the curriculum. But in science of reading and in language development research, there's a big portion about oral language development and making meaning and the actual act of communication. Both sets of research are full in support, but for some reason, these pieces don't make it into the scripted curriculum as much as other pieces. So we feel like we shouldn't be doing it as much. But for our multilingual students, making meaning, understanding a message is crucial. And if the knowledge isn't sticking in these isolated letters, sounds, CVC, nonsense words, if that's not sticking, then you need to go about it from a meaning-making approach, which is we work on the communication first, the oral language development first, and this is where we need our ELD teachers back in language. We're developing the language, and then we're sticking the skill onto that language. In a lot of cases, if you have students who have been doing this for a couple years and it's not sticking, it's because they don't have enough to stick it to. Until you're a level 3 in your oral language proficiency, I would not ever recommend to go into our traditional literacy interventions because we need oral language and language structures to stick those skills to. And we can spend a lot of time on this, and hopefully we will in a future time. But just right now, take my word for it, that's where the research is. They need the language to stick those skills to. If they're not moving, I guarantee you that's a big piece of it. because as soon as we flip it and take a functional language approach, they start taking off. And then each of our adults is adding a different piece of the puzzle. So one person's giving the tree water, one's putting the soil on, the sun is shining down. We bring different tools, and through that collection of different expertise and tools, that's when we grow the students, right? More of the same is going to give you more of the same. Stagnant, stuck, lack of growth. So part of functional language planning research is the teaching and learning cycle. And this is where we start when we do functional language planning with teachers, is that how do we work through the teaching and learning cycle? And we start with step one, planning with the end in mind. And the end in mind comes from our language standards and from our curriculum, right? What do they need to be able to do? And what language is it going to take for them to be able to get there? All of us coming up with that together. And we have all kinds of different structures and formats and templates and things that we help walk teachers through. So I want you to hear for just a couple minutes from a teacher who was going through some functional language planning training with that group of third graders who had been in interventions for 3 years and weren't moving. And here's when she flipped it to a more functional language approach, what she experienced.
I saw
Whoops, I'm sorry. Let me share the sound here quickly.
them just in their own process. I saw them doing what we had shared. Like they would write a sentence and then they would go back and reread it and like whisper read it, or I saw them like tracking their own writing. And I think that in the very primary grades, we do a lot of shared writing and like modeling the writing and rereading that writing. But we could, as they get a little older, we expect them to do more independently. And so I don't know that these guys get a lot of shared writing and then model, then they do it themselves. So that was kind of interesting that they took that process that we did and then they did it independently.
As Amanda said, part of the data she's been collecting for this pilot, when so grateful for the principal and Amanda and the reading specialist for all agreeing to try it out, because what we've been doing isn't really getting them far, so let's try something different. And through that process, Amanda has a rubric there on the table, and the students then are individually talking about the topics. So these individual 2-minute conversations are perfect for data collection. The rubric looks at, Amanda, help me, it has vocabulary, comprehension of the prompt.
Yeah, I actually pulled it up right here. It has comprehension. So it's an overall 25-point rubric. And each of these 5 things has a score of 5. So it has comprehension, like understanding the prompt and the question and able to respond to the prompt. And then it has vocabulary, grammar, fluency, and pronunciation. This reminds me for myself to record things and just for myself too, because when I play this back and I realize like, yeah, his vocabulary was there, but his grammar and sentence structure was not there. I could have done a lot better job of teaching that. And or like when looking at this whole 25-point rubric that I was looking at, after a time of four cycles doing this, I realized I think I got the content part down. I think I got the vocabulary part. Like that part of my goal of teaching was good, but I needed to really focus on the language, the grammar, and like the sentence fluency with the speaking. I think part of the reason is because we took the 5-day process and squeezed it into 3 days. And when I do this again, I will do it differently and more to your model that you gave us today with more of a language focus.
What kind of growth did you see overall? And so Amanda goes on to talk about how her how her students are growing and what's happening there, and how they're taking that context. She's using the context from the language arts classroom. They were talking about colonization, and they were talking about what that process was like and what supplies people took and how they traveled, and then they were writing together and reading together about those conversations that they had. And in that process of bringing the language development into it, they understood the context and the content area curriculum much better. They had the language they needed to participate in the classroom and follow along. And they were also able to connect those ideas to the foundational skills and the reading skills and the tracking, as she said, and breaking things down, because it made sense and they had meaning in their mind and they had a message that they wanted to communicate and understand.
I saw them.
Oops, sorry. So what we,
I'm just in their own
oh my goodness, now Amanda's going to keep on talking now.
process.
All right. So what that idea of shifting a language focus back into what we do, right? That's giving us as ELD an important role that has been left out. And that's why we feel that struggle with our students, right? That's why we're feeling stuck, right? So, let me come back to my share here. Are you feeling the connection? Are you following? Are you getting, let me know where you are. What's in your mind right now? Is this making sense to you? Is this something you're intrigued about, that you see possibilities for? Let me know where you are. What are you thinking right now in the chat? And as you do that, for time's sake, I do want to keep moving, but I do want to hear what you have to say. So again, you have a tool to start with as we head towards wrapping up, of how to start looking at content through the language lens and teaching the language that is needed right now to function in this curriculum, to give students the confidence that they have when the language they're learning fits what they're expected to do, right? There's no disconnect. It fits perfectly with what they're being expected to do in the classroom. They can participate in the conversation. They're excited and they want to read and write about it. And it's amazing how much reading and writing knowledge students have that we're not giving them opportunities to use because we're so focused on those small piece intervention skills. Yes, they still need that work. I mean, don't go back and tell anybody I said no more interventions, but they need something to stick it to, and they need to be able to create that big picture so that they can come back to those skills. All right, so in my opinion, everyone needs to become a functional language planning expert, whether you're the content teacher, the administrator, the ELD teacher. The more comfortable we get with taking a different approach to language development, we will be able to smooth over all those challenges we talked about in the beginning. We will feel more successful. Our students will feel more successful. The language growth will start to happen, the confidence will go up. And I know it sounds like, you know, the infomercial for selling the whatever's going to cure all your ailments, but it really, in the situations we have in the curriculum we're using in classrooms, it is the best match for how to get everybody's expertise in the classroom and find a way that we flow with each other and bring out the best of what all of our adults have to offer. So I encourage you to, in the follow-up email, as I said, I'll share a link to the research if you're interested into digging in that more, and just spend some time thinking about functional language planning. If you Google Ruslana Westerland's blog, I think it's called Reclaiming Language. She has lots of blog entries where you can learn more about functional language planning and dig into it a little bit. If you find that this is something that really interests you and you want to develop your expertise, then I have something I want to offer you. So I'm going to be very transparent and say that I'm going to tell you about a program we have. So I'm moving from the theoretical into a solution. If you're not interested in that, then, I totally understand, and I appreciate you following and gaining the information and caring about your students and joining us. If you want to keep listening, then I would love that too. All right, so we want to, right, dive deeper, right? The guide gets us started, but then it's like once we get started, we're like, wait a minute, am I doing this right? Right. And we need more coaching and guidance. I went back to Dr. Westerland so many times for that coaching and guidance. So we will get to the point where you can knock out really targeted and explicit pieces that fit into the language of what's going on in the classroom and watch your students gain that confidence. So what we have in English Learner Portal, as I said, over the past couple years, we have been talking about all of these challenges, and it hit me, I'd say in the late fall last year, that it's time to, like, we're needlessly suffering. Like, we can help teachers with this. We can start training teachers into how to make this mind shift. And so throughout those months, working with Dr. Westerland, we have created the Functional Language Planning Expert Intensive. It is an intense, chock full of lots and lots of good information program. Our next cohort, we have Amanda from the video was in our spring cohort. We have a summer cohort going on right now. Our fall cohort begins September 15th and runs through December 12th. And in this cohort, you get more of that background research and really practical strategies for how you can weave language development into a push-in co-teach situation. And then more tools like the language alignment guide and planners that will help you organize your thoughts and be more systemic and targeted. So lots of strategies. We'll work through many, many examples collaboratively and through coaching using that teaching and learning cycle, that circle that I told you about that we base most everything on in functional language planning. We'll work through that process. We had our summer cohort had a class last night, and we started working through some examples of give me something from your curriculum and let's apply the teaching and learning cycle. And I could see the light bulbs going off. So they have a challenge to bring more of those the next time we meet. And we're going to get into systems and structures so that it's not just grabbing items off a menu, but that we do have a very well-balanced, well-planned meal program for our language development. It does run from September to December, so 12 weeks-ish, around 12 weeks. And the time commitment, I know there's no time. There's no time for anything when it comes to the world of teaching. The reality is it's about 2 hours a week of commitment, and you're spending more than that each week worrying about what you are doing or you're not doing, or replanning or planning something that you never got to teach because it didn't fit right. We know where all of our time gets sucked out. If you could streamline a co-planning session into 10 minutes versus 30 minutes, right, you'll regain that time. The schedule alternates between a live session via Zoom. We meet in the evening for 2 hours, and then we'll have a week that is all asynchronous with modules that are online for you to go through when it works for you. Then we'll come back together live again to have those. The live sessions are the best collaboration. The group last night, they had a conversation for 45 minutes of everybody participating around just how to implement one or two of the strategies that were in the course and what ideas they had, right? It's brainstorming with your people, and it's wonderful to be a part of. So in the program, with that, you get individual coaching sessions, because while we can teach all of these big ideas and give you lots of examples, everybody's situation is a little different. Yesterday, I had two coaching sessions with people from the summer cohort. One of them teaches in a pull-out program for elementary. One of them co-teaches all of it. So their situations are very different, right? Very different levels of control, very different expectations from administration and co-teachers. And so what we have is at least two. Normally we do, 3, 4, 5, depends on how much you sign up. Individual coaching sessions where the cohort members go to my Calendly link and they grab a time on the calendar. They tell me what they want to focus on, and we get together via Zoom and we have a one-on-one conversation of how does this apply to you and your situation. Sometimes we plan together. Sometimes we brainstorm. Sometimes it's a vent session where something didn't go right and they need to be heard. It's whatever you want it to be. So the coaching sessions are awesome. And you schedule those whenever you want them. So that time is completely up to you. You also have two of the biggest experts in the field as part of the program. As I said, Dr. Ruslana Westerlin has held my hand from 2015 till 2025, and she still does. She has contributed quite a bit of her written information for the asynchronous modules. We have pre-recorded messages from her in the asynchronous modules. And she also joins two of our live sessions and leads the first hour of two of those live sessions where you are taught about systemic functional linguistics directly from an international expert who is in, I believe it's Stockholm right now for the SFL International Conference as one of the panelists. Like, you're learning from the best. We also have in the co-teach section of the program a pre-recorded message for you or training for you from Dr. Andrea Honigsfeld, who has published many, many books around co-teaching and collaboration. So one of the top experts there. She is a part of the course virtually. Lots of tools, lots of planning guides, organizers, structures, templates to help get you organized in your thinking and get that planning process down so you can look at something in content and know your focus and get your ideas together and go communicate with your teacher in no time. Really speed up your co-planning process. English Learner Portal has what we call the Teacher's Archive, and it's our digital, virtual, asynchronous file cabinet of all things. English Learner Portal has been in existence for 7 years. So 7 years of blogs, webinars, videos, course material, 100+ hours of professional development content that's available to you 24/7. You get a year access to that. I can share case studies with you of Belmont Elementary School. For you Montgomery County people, sounds familiar. Belmont is where Amanda in the video was from. We've done quite a bit of work with Belmont and Watkins Mill schools in functional language planning. And we also have lots of other information that we can share. So if you are interested in checking out the cohort, you can go to the cohort's webpage, and there you'll be able to download the schedule. You'll be able to see what the different topics are that we're going to cover, what dates we're meeting. There's information there that you can share with administrators if you need administrator support in your participation. Most districts, if you have tuition reimbursement, allow to use your tuition reimbursement for this program because it is approved for graduate credit through UMass Global and accredited universities. So it has what most districts are looking for when it comes to tuition reimbursement. If you want to talk to me more about it before you make a decision, or if you want me to give you a sneak peek in and give you a little tour of what the modules look like and what's involved, you can always grab a time on my calendar. There you see calendly.com/English Learner Portal. Make an appointment. I'd be happy to talk about what we're doing in the program. If you want to talk to one of the current or past members, I'm sure they'd be happy to speak to you as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email to let me know what you're thinking. If you want to share the information, the video, you'll get a link to the video, to the schedule, to the research, all of that you can share with your colleagues as well. So again, thank you for the hour and 15 minutes that you have spent with me. I really appreciate your interest and your desire to do what's best for your students and to keep an open mind to what the possibilities are. And I hope that we'll see you in future webinars, courses in the functional language program, however we can support you. All right. Thanks for joining and have a great day. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.